Hey everyone, today is the 12th. Welcome to Vena's Spiritual Lounge, where you know that we interpret everything spiritually from a spiritual perspective, spiritual standpoint, right? Because that is the true basis of our reality, of our existence. We are spiritual beings, right? And I think most of us get that. Most of us have accepted that, understand it. We are spiritual beings having a three-dimensional existence, right? Where everything is focused on this narrow-fied view of reality, okay? But in actuality, our true entire selves are from an essence that is spiritual. And this 3D is part of that spiritual reality, existence, dimension, if you want to call it. Okay? It's not separate from, it's all one. Okay? And we are seeing things from this lens, right? This lens. And a friend of mine, I was getting ready to pull out my little spear. What the heck? I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Ugh. Jeez, did it get heavier? Ugh. A friend of mine said, "Oh, God, Peter, you and that spear cracked me up." I don't care what they say. Okay? So here is our entire existence, right? Many facets to it, right? Many different levels to it, many different views to it. And we are just confined to one or two of these. That's all we're seeing right there. That's it. Okay? But the reality is there's all of this inside out, etc. Okay? That we are comprised of. All right? And so, why am I saying all that? Because it's going to lead into one of the main things that's such a big topic right now. Um, this recent death of this person who was very reprehensible. Very reprehensible. There's no other way to spin it. Um, I didn't even know all of the reprehensible things that they said until just recently when, they were playing more and more clips of them. And boy, oh boy. And so someone sent a post into, I have a Facebook group, My Near Death Experience from A to Z. And someone sent a anonymous post in there and saying, "Hey, look, I know we're supposed to look at things from a divine love perspective, but it's kind of hard. I mean, sure, we don't wish this on anyone, but it's kind of hard to look at this from a divine love perspective. Can you help with that? Can you explain it?" And a couple more people chimed in on the YouTube channel saying basically kind of the same thing, you know. And of course, the right now is trying to guilt you into feeling, oh my God, this guy was like a hero, a savior. He's now a martyr, and this and that. Um, so here's the reality of it. When this actually very, very first happened, when no one was sure that, how bad they were hit or, um, what had really happened. There were very little details at first. Um, something just came through. It was two things that came through to me right away that I knew that somehow they weren't going to eventually make it. Um, but I didn't still even know all the details. But I was like, well, if it was so, if it was such a deadly type of thing, wouldn't they have said it? But maybe an hour or two went by, and the second thing that came through right away was that this has something to do with um, crushing sort of a narrative and crushing like a what's the word I'm trying to think of, like in other words an illusion, okay, crushing an illusion, okay. And but I still wasn't connecting the dots because, like I said, at first there was really hardly any information. And then the strangest, very strangest thing happened. Don the Con announced the death. It's like, well, wow. That's very interesting. So I will say this, um, two things. Number one, don't let anyone guilt you into feeling something that you're just not feeling. That's the first thing. Um, a lot of people aren't feeling a mourning, a sadness. You of course don't want to see that type of situation happen to anyone. That's a humane reaction. Okay. Um, I certainly don't. I abhor violence. I really do. In all forms. However, I also know that sometimes it takes that type of thing to open people's eyes. In other words, if this was a hammer time, and this is a hammer time for many in this country, and I spoke about the hammer right in the last previous video, but this is a hammer time for many to start looking at reality, um, and not their made up illusions. And this is going to shatter, it's going to break a lot of psyches. And it already has, and we're seeing that. Um, the game that this administration is trying to pull in instantly blaming the liberals and some of the other politicians, instantly blaming the liberals when they didn't even have a suspect, right? And that's a whole nother issue. I won't even really go into that, but I will just say that um, there's a reason for that instant spin to the liberals. Okay. Um, don't allow yourself to get caught up or even argue with those perpetuating that, um, because it definitely wasn't a liberal. That I will say. Uh, 100% I will say that. And I can't even really speak on all of the things that I've gotten regarding that, just because I wasn't given the go ahead to speak on it. But it definitely wasn't a liberal. Um, and it wasn't actually who the right thinks either. Okay? Um, but it's sort of like almost a game being played. Okay? But the spiritual reality of the entire situation is, what was given to me was that um, this young man came for a certain purpose, okay? And as he got here, he kept on part of that purpose, but his message was skewed. And he kept going on. In other words, he had two paths, and he kept going on the other path, okay? And his spirit made a choice that basically he was not fulfilling his true life path in the way that he initially came to do. And he was creating much more harm than good. And so he took one of his exits, okay? And his actual exit was chosen by him. And that's going to be very hard for many to accept, but it's the truth. We choose how we come in and we choose how we leave. We choose what circumstances to come into life, and we choose how we exit this life. And that is a very difficult pill for many people to swallow, especially when it involves suffering, etc. But we can't always see the reasons why we create that particular type of suffering, okay? So, like I said, please don't allow yourself to be guilted into feeling something that you're not. He knows, his spirit knows that he was way off base with many things, okay? Oneness is the key. Oneness is the key, and he was not preaching that. He was not promoting that. And several things that he said were exactly in line with how he passed. Okay? We here on this plane, okay, are not in full view of all that goes on behind the scenes. All that goes on behind the scenes here, and all that goes on behind the scenes spiritually. Okay? Now, what I will say is, I love how his spirit chose to end the negativity. I truly do. I admire his spirit for that, to put a stop to that. That to me is, that was a very noble type of thing to do. In other words, it decided that the human self of that person was way off base, way out of line, and so far from what it initially came to do that it decided no more. No more. And so for that, I definitely admire his spiritual self, and how he chose to exit at this time. But as for the human version of him, it was not good. Not at all. Not at all. So, and his wife, as well as the child or children that they have, they also chose this life with him, knowing that could be a possibility, that he could take one of those exit periods, exit dates. Okay? And, if this sounds very matter of fact and however it may sound, that is not normal, it's actually the reality of how things work. Um, you know, I remember very well the very last speech Martin Luther King gave, right? And in that speech, he basically told all of us that he wasn't going to be around much longer. He wasn't. He knew it. You could see it in his eyes. It was quite distressing to him. But there was a resignation and understanding of why he had to go when he went. He understood somewhere deep on his spiritual level, on a spiritual level for him, he had accepted it and he knew. Okay? And I could almost literally cry just thinking about it because I certainly wish he had stuck around longer. But that was something that was set up on a much different level than here. And he knew it. He knew it. So, these type of things, although they are hard to understand, hard to grasp, it's the reality. It is the reality. And I'm not speaking from my personal opinion, Vena, or what I'm guessing. I'm saying from what I've seen. I'm saying from what I've seen. Okay? How it worked. Everything is orchestrated from a spiritual standpoint. Things are not orchestrated here. They are not we are not in control here. Things are not, I keep telling you guys that power does not reside with us on this level. We are here, right, to put in as much spiritual understanding and into practice in our day-to-day, minute-by-minute lives. That is why we are here. Literally. Okay? But the real power, the real existence is not this dimension. It is not. Okay? So we have to truly, once you understand that on a core instinctive level, you will see life much differently. You will have a much better view of what is going on. Your understanding of things will expand greatly. It truly will. Once you grasp on a truly instinctive level, our true reality is spiritual. The true spiritual base is divine love. And I told you all the time, it doesn't always look pretty from our view. But think about this. Think about this. And the brilliance in which this man chose how he passed. It's something that he literally talked about and preached about. And so it was like, it's sort of beyond a karmic type of thing. It's sort of like, yeah, let the people that are listening and absorbing my words see the reality of what I'm saying, the stuff I'm spewing. And like I said, it's going to fracture a lot of psyches, but it will, and it's going to cause some difficulties. Okay, but it's a necessary thing. It's a very necessary thing. There's going to be much more that comes out about this situation that is going to really swivel a lot of heads and, like I said, fracture the psyche of a lot of people. Okay? Um, and I just find it very interesting how the media is just so focused on this one particular thing when the Minnesota senator and her husband were gunned down. The Democratic senator and her husband from Minnesota, they were gunned down, and there was very little news coverage. And even Don the Con was like, it's a waste of time calling the governor of Minnesota. Not going to do it. You didn't hear anything from the right wing about it. There was an actual school shooting the day of this other event, and almost crickets about it. Okay, but you see, this is a last gasp for this type of mentality, this type of narrow mindedness. This is the last gasp. Okay? And I have warned you guys, there's going to be a lot of explosive type of events. And there's more to come. There are more to come. We almost won't be able to catch our breath. Okay? But when the dust settles, things will be different in a good way. In a good way. It's going to do what it needs to do. Okay? And one of those explosive events is Russia sending in those drones to Poland. They're testing the waters. I wasn't given that really is going to go too far. It seems like it's going to be a very regional type of thing, sort of in like this one spot, and then it's just, they're testing the waters. But, you know, that's kind of what they do. Washington, D.C., Don the Con will be allowing the takeover of the National Guard and the military to expire this week, so that's going to be over with. And Illinois Governor Pritzker, he was like, don't bring it here. We ain't having it. And so those plans were actually scrapped too. Apparently, they're not going to go heavily into Illinois like they initially planned. I'm sure ICE will be there to a capacity, but not like they were planning. So that's a very good thing. I don't know if many of you remember, but I told you guys a while ago that all of the authoritarian dictators will be gone by the end of 2026. So far, the South Korean one, he's out. Remember, he planned that coup to take over, and they took him out forcibly out of their presidential palace or building or whatever it was. And then he was taken to court. Bolsonaro of Brazil. Remember he did like the Trump type coup, tried to take over and stay in office, and he was ousted. Well, he just received 27 years in prison. for that attempted coup. Okay, at least Brazil can do things right. So that's another one going. There's been a few others that were taken out too, and I'm sure you guys will remind me. But by 2026, we're going to see the end of these authoritarian dictators, because I just see them. We're going into a new period where that type of energy just won't be around. Some will be out a lot sooner than 2026, the end of 2026. Um, Don the Con was booed at the Yankee Stadium when he showed up there. Um, and a lot of people are saying, hey, Vina, you know, he had a press conference in the Oval Office and it looked like it was AI. It probably was. Um, we don't think he's still around. He still is, but barely. We're talking about holding on by threads, right? Um, I told you, and I've been telling you guys, he's extremely sick. Being treated for so many different things. I've been telling you guys this. Um, he's being treated for so much. It's like they're literally propping him up now with scotch tape. Okay, that's the best description I can give you at this point. Um, so yeah, he's oh, it's it's interesting. Um, let's see. James Wilkinshaw, Dem, won one of those vacated seats. There was the congressman who was in that seat had passed, and that seat was vacant. So another Dem won that seat. So he's in Washington. He was sworn in. So that reduces the um, Republican majority by one. Um, and that's just going to keep inching down till they're not in power anymore. It's amazing how the universe does certain things. Uh, when this first happened, when this election took over, it looked almost impossible. They held a great, pretty decent majority, and it was like, you know, and then we had people pass, and it was like, but now it's like, Dems have been winning here and there, special elections, this, that. So the lead that they have is whittling down, and we needed to whittle down, and it will. It is, and it will continue to do so. So, probably the final thing I just want to chat about. This is not going to be a long video at all. I'm not feeling my best. I don't know if you can tell or not. It's like the weather type of change, and I'm just not a rah rah boom ba right now. So, uh, the main message that I want to leave in this video, that I'm kind of being instructed to leave, is your own spiritual self integrity, okay, is all that matters, okay? And in that spiritual integrity, okay, and let's relate it to that question that was asked to me in the Facebook group about not should we feel guilty for not feeling sadness, or that type of thing. I'm gonna tell you guys what one of my sons always says to me: "Mom, keep it a bean, keep it a bean." Okay, keep it real. That's basically what he's saying to me. Keep it real. You know. Um, Especially if he asks me something, and I try to be gentle with him at first, and then he'll say, "No, mom, just keep it a bean. Come on, give it to me. Just keep it a bean." Okay, so keeping it a bean, as far as the spiritual reality and your own integrity. Okay, keep it real with yourself. Number one, not any person, I'm so sure, wished that type of event on him or anyone. That's the first thing. Um, Deep down, what basically you have felt is you want to be rid of that filth, that yuck. Ugh. And that's what you're feeling. It's like, ugh, that yuck. Ugh. And that is why you do not feel uh, the the so-called sadness that you should be feeling, right? Okay, because it was yuck and toxic and ugh. Well, no, I don't want to be associated with that. I'm not mourning that, not at all, not even a teeny bit, and I'm not going to fake it or pretend. But like I said, I do have respect for the spiritual self that chose to end that toxicity, that yuck. I do have respect for that spiritual aspect of that person. I really do. And I understand why it had to happen like that. Okay? And believe it or not, divine love is working all in that situation too. Even though it looks tragic to our eyes, right? To our human sense, it looks tragic. But that is the way that it had to appear in order to work its work. Okay, so keep it a being with yourself and just know somehow, although you may not understand it, that divine love is still working in that situation, even with those people that are so called horrified and saddened, and it's still working with them too. Okay, so for those who are not in the grieving process, please do not feel any guilt from that. Please don't. Okay, it's like you're bringing on unnecessary feelings, emotions that you don't need to. Okay, you're not keeping it a bean with yourself. I'm not going to carry any unnecessary grieving or guilt that I shouldn't. That's not being cold, that's just the reality of it. But I certainly know and acknowledge that divine love is working that situation with not only his family, but with those who did follow him. Okay? It's working that situation too. I don't know how it's going to work out for them in the complete full picture, but I know it's there. And I know it's doing its thing. Okay? Every video I try to show you guys examples of how divine love unfolds in certain ways. And it's not always pretty. It's not always cute. but it's always there and it's always working and it's doing its thing. It's something that cannot be stopped. It's like this waterfall behind me. The water just keeps flowing, right? There may be, you may step inside of it and sort of break it off, and so it goes in other directions, right? But it's still flowing, it's still coming. That's divine love. It's always flowing, always there. So, and we're not wishing anything extra or any negativity on anyone. We're acknowledging and wanting to see how divine love unfolds in this situation. Okay? And it may be that, our sensibilities are tested, right? But you have to understand this from the spiritual standpoint. Although this reality is extremely real to us, okay, it is just one aspect of the spiritual realm, the spiritual world. And it's almost like the spiritual world putting on a play, right? And putting up certain actors and props and this and that, okay? Allowing us to fulfill certain things that we need to fulfill within our own spiritual selves. So spiritual sensibilities are a little bit different than what our sensibilities are. And the more you understand the reality of spirit, the reality of the true reality, which is spiritual, okay, the less this here will affect you in a negative way. And it's not because you become cold or callous. If anything, you're more understanding and more compassionate, but your view is broadened. It's just broadened. Okay, so I appreciate all of you. I really do. I always say that because it's so true. Sorry I'm not getting to some of the more asked questions. It's just not feeling those right now. I'm just not being given that right now. But all things will unfold, right? And a lot of times people say, you know what? I had a question, but you answered it in the video, so I don't need to ask it anymore. So that's a good thing. But take care, guys, and love to you. And may you see the love that is there already. Okay? By the way, one last thing is I wanted to tell you guys that, have you guys checked that earthquake website I've told you about? There have been so many in Russia, in that region of Russia. It's it's astonishing. And for those who forgot, it's earthquake.usgs.gov. Please go check it out. They show an initial view of, I believe it's within a day. But of course, you can go through their filter, change that, and just go look at whatever time period you want. But I would say just look within the past week or even the last 3 days. Russia has had an inordinate amount of earthquakes. It's unbelievable. And it's the same exact region over and over again. Um, it's quite interesting, quite interesting. So anyway, yeah, this whole thing, it's just going to be sort of a little. It's not going to be what people think. It's not. It's just going to, as it unfolds, you will understand what I'm saying, and just allow it to play out. Allow it to play out. Worry about yourself, your spiritual self. Um, and by doing that, you will see things differently. All right, so take care, guys, and thank you.